found it really helpful last time when we had kind of a ground rules setting. It's not a thing we do all the time. We only do it every couple of years and the members of the teams change. But for instance, one of my favorite things about the last budget process was this thumbs up. Do we have 4 to even pursue this question? Those kinds of things. So at what point in the process will council have the chance to kind of have a conversation about how the council would like to govern itself through the process?
On the 24th.
Okay.
So we'll get some preliminary work together. We'll figure out where we started last time, what worked, what didn't work. I need a thumb counter, I know that. And then we'll bring that as part of the 24th conversation and just take off from there. We'll make any changes and we'll review that again at the October 8th meeting or continue any conversation we need to so we're clear before we start towards the end of the month.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Council President Kritzer.
Yeah, I would just note, I think that's a great callback, and I think we've been, over the last couple budget cycles, refining that document. So hopefully we can revisit the one from the last budget, which I think worked pretty well, and we can bring it back to the council for any review.
Would you all like a copy of it now? I can certainly send kind of what we did last time, so you've got it, can take a look, and maybe a little bit more prepared for the conversation on the 24th.
Seeing lots of head nodding, so yes, please.
Got it.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Maybe it could go in the SharePoint.
There we go. It could be the first document.
It definitely will.
Great. All right, keeping us on track, we're going to move on to, as long as you are done.
I am.
Dr. Cochran. Move on to the upcoming public hearing on proposed amendment to CM 24-422, Community Facilities District.
Thank you. I am here to propose that we put on next week's council meeting. There is a public hearing, and then we would like to have consent agenda items for these CFD amendments. There is the 2014-01 and then the 2016-01, which is my next agenda item. The amendment for 2014-1 is to add scope to the current project. There's only one project that is taking place under that CFD. That is the Redmond Technology Station. This scope would allow for accessibility features around the station. And so the amendment is needed for that. So next week would be a public hearing, and then the resolution that would help us adopt this amendment would be on consent.
Any questions? Great. Do we have consensus to put that on consent? I am seeing all sorts of yes. So
Excellent.
Thank you. Moving on to 1601.
1601, the amendment that's being requested there is to add 4 multimodal projects to the CFD. This has been in process for quite a while. These projects are identified already in the city's CIP and does show the funding as CFD funding. It's just now getting through this process. So the projects, there's project information sheets that were provided for those. Next week would be then a public hearing and then consent agenda to approve the resolution.
Great. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm not able to join right now, but I'll be there in a couple minutes. My question was actually on both of these items. It's just a general question for these agreements with CFD. Since these are such large sums of money for capital projects, are they also required to meet the requirements that we have at the city for 1% for art?
I will check for you. Thank you. I need to check on that for you. I will send you an email tomorrow. Thank you for the question.
That's great. Yeah, the question is, and that's regarding the way that this is approached is it's an amendment to the contract, so there's an opportunity to add that in as a sort of a statement of the requirement or that opportunity. So that's something I would like to see in both of those if it's not something that's required already.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council President Kritzer.
Thank you. I would note on that these projects are done through a separate special district, the Community Facilities District. So they're not, my guess would be that they wouldn't be governed by the same policies of the city of Redmond, but I'll be interested to hear the answer on that.
Me too.
But I think it's a good question. I appreciate that. One thing I just wanted to note as kind of context, since I've been on the CFD for a while, is that the opportunity that we see here especially is that there were some efficiencies in the original funding that was allocated by Microsoft for the original intent of projects here. We finished those projects and realized we had money left over, and so had this great discussion at the CFD to say, what else could we fund that would still be within the intent of this idea of public-private partnership? And Microsoft was very amenable to keeping the money instead of having it returned back to Microsoft, but actually keep it and invest it in even more city infrastructure. And so we had asked the staff, what else could we invest it in? What are some of our key CIP projects that would make sense here? And so this list is reflective of that conversation, and the CFD Board of Supervisors is supportive of this list.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you for sharing that, Council President. And then I wonder then for those that are listening, how then did the selection process happen as far as which items that we're going to be taking on?
Essentially, we had asked the staff to come back to us with a suite of options, and over the course of a couple meetings, we looked at those different options and then determined which ones we thought would make the most sense amongst the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions on this item? And are we amenable to this being placed on consent pending the question about the 1%? Great. Seeing consensus. Thank you. Next, we have item number 4, benefits update, potential Redmond plan changes for 2025. We have Director Laird joining us.
Good evening, Council. I am here with Nicole Bruce, who is our Benefits Program Manager, and she is going to share with you some benefit changes that she would like to propose the Council consider to be effective on January 1st of 2025.
Thank you. Hi, Council members. Today, I'm seeking your approval to bring the 2025 Redmond changes to consent at the September 17th meeting. These are all items that have been reviewed by our Employee Benefits Advisory Committee, and together they help to make this recommendation. Redmond is our self-insured health plan, and each year we work with Primera, which is our third-party administrator, our benefits broker, and EBAC to bring these changes forward. We discussed those throughout multiple meetings throughout the year, and this year, the cadence that we did is that EBAC has actually voted prior to bringing the recommendations to you, which has been nice. We moved that schedule up a little bit, so usually we vote after this meeting, and then it's the final vote you have by consent, but we've already taken that vote. All of the recommended changes have been voted on unanimously by the EBAC, and HR supports all of those recommendations as well. So the changes being considered this year, one of them is to align our Redmond plan with benefits offered to dependents in our Kaiser plan. And so that is adding a maternity benefit for dependent children. So that was something that used to not be covered. We do now allow dependents on our plan until age 26. And so obviously we could potentially have those claims. And then the other two are newer programs that are being offered by Primera. Both are in the behavioral health space. One of them is actually just like a referral service. So a member can call and say, I need to have some behavioral health care. They work with someone who then calls providers for them. Those of you may know that is a lot of work right now to find somebody that's accepting new patients. And typically when you're having those behavioral health situations, it's really hard to even just make those phone calls. So this service does that for them. gets back to them within a certain amount of time with a list of providers that are taking availability within criteria that they have requested, and typically within in-network. So that one is something that would be available to anybody that's enrolled on our Redmond plan. And then the next one is actually a behavioral health program that it's online phone app, and it's targeted at children for behavioral health. So it's what I would consider sort of preventive care. So there's things that parents can do with their children to start talking about different words or feelings and thoughts. And so that's where it starts. You can then request coaching sessions. And then if you're working with a coach and that you feel like you need to seek therapy, then it just continues to get escalated through the program. And so the actual app, the web services, and the coaching and counseling is at no cost to members. If they do get referred to the actual therapy sessions, then that runs like any normal visit with a therapist through our health plan. Again, all three of those have been unanimously recommended by EBAC as well as Human Resources. None of these plan changes will have a cost impact to like our actual premium increases. So last year, some of the items we brought forward, there was like a 1% or 2% increase to premium rates. All these programs, they don't anticipate to have an impact to claims. There are costs associated with the programs, but those are, they don't feel like will make an impact to claims. And then the self-insurance fund is paid for out of the 511 fund, and any changes in the plan each year, because there are no costs this year, but so it's within the budget. There's no financial request that goes along with this. So the next step for this would be to bring changes to consent, and any questions that you guys have, I'm ready to answer.
Great. Any questions from council members? Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you so much. I think the city is really proud to offer really comprehensive benefits here at the city, and it was helpful to read in the memo that actually behavioral health, of which we're adding a couple of tools for employees and their families, is a top category of claims here at the city. So I don't have a question, just want to thank you all for your work on this and continuing again to add more tools so that families involved here at the city of Redmond can get what they need. Thanks.
Yep. Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. No question, just a comment, and that is, I think that we're doing a lot of really great work here at the city, and by taking care of our people around reproductive health as well as behavioral health and mental wellness, I think is just huge and wonderful, and where I see other cities scaling back, for us to be moving forward and saying, no, this is a priority, and these are our values. Just really proud, so thank you for the work.
Councilmember Salahuddin.
Thank you. Again, yeah, echoing my colleagues, really appreciate this. I do have a question specific to the Behavioral Health Navigator, and if, I Googled it and looked around, but didn't see a lot of information about specifically that, the list where it says it's delivered within 3 to 4 business days. Would it be one potential provider, or do they offer multiple? And do you have a little bit more of a scope on that?
So they try to get at least 3 to 4. Obviously, it's going to depend on the criteria of the person, because they can say if they want a male or female provider. So the more limited the scope, I mean, they can't guarantee anything. They also, would escalate potentially and get it back sooner depending on the crisis situation or things like that. But their goal, and they introduced the program last year on like a trial basis, and it's been very successful, and they've been able to do that most of the time. So unfortunately, there's no guarantee, but they could call the member back and say, we were able to find one that meets all of your criteria, but here's 2 or 3 more if you're willing to
Perfect. Yeah,
expand that.
That's great, and exactly what I wanted to hear. And you actually answered my follow-up question on the 3 to 4 business days being escalated if there's something more urgent.
Yep.
Thank you. I will jump in with a couple of my questions. So the Bright Line program is in addition to not replacing like the Wellspring or anything else. It's An
Correct.
add-on service. Okay,
Yep.
great. And then last year I'd brought up covering more behavioral health treatment options. I don't know if that was in the conversations that you had with the committee. Can you just fill us in on if that was part of the conversation? And I know currently in the mental health field, a lot of treatment options are considered experimental, and our current policy is preventing any coverage of anything that is considered experimental. But since mental health is lagging so far behind physical, other kinds of health care, it's a space in which I think we have some room for growth.
Yeah, so we, with the health plans and that sort of experimental language and things like that, you really can't differentiate between one type of coverage or another. We do look at appeal processes, so we have had success getting some experimental treatments through that appeal process, covered if needed. We are about to undergo, there's a lot of mental health parity laws out there now, so we're actually about to undergo a evaluation of our mental health parity within our health plan to make sure that we are, number one, abiding by all those laws, but if there's any room for improvement or things like that that we're seeking. So, and it's expansive on drug lists versus treatments and all of that. So we're going to have that done hopefully by the end of this year.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And then just to reiterate, you said there was going to be no increase in 2025 for premiums.
So not as a result of these changes. So there's multiple things that go into developing premiums, which is medical inflation, cost of claims, and those types of things. Medical inflation is in the double digits this year. We've had very good claims, so we do not anticipate our premiums to be in the double digits, but there's multiple things that go into it, not just plan design.
Right.
So we will have those numbers towards the end of this month, what those increases will look like. We do have on the Kaiser plan, we do have that renewal back because it's a fully insured plan, so we get that a lot sooner. And there is no increase on that plan. We know that right now.
Can you share that information with us as soon as you have it?
Yeah, so we publish rates to employees November 1st. I have the official rates very shortly before that. Because our stop-loss insurance won't lock until after they've seen September claims, which don't get released until mid-October. So it's a very quick turnaround when we'll know that.
Thank you.
But yes, as soon as possible. We try to get those out as soon as possible, for sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions on this one? All right. Seeing none, thank you all so much. And are we good to put this item on consent for September 17th?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we will be joined by Director Garcia for the approval of the contract with Asset Works, Inc. This is for our mitigation of fleet focus and fuel focus, and a lot of other things. Oh, I misspoke. We are being joined by Director Marchand.
Good afternoon, Council. We're here to seek permission to add a contract to the September 17th consent agenda, and it's for an Asset Works contract. It's a 2023-2024 BTIP approved project to move Asset Works, the city's asset management platform for our motor fleet, to the cloud and to expand the use of telemetrics. So this project is budgeted for approximately $186,000, and our current contract we're looking at for this one is $94,000.
Any questions? We're good to put this on consent.
Perfect.
We have one question. Councilmember Stewart.
I'll just say for the viewing public, if anyone's really interested in that, this technology was referenced in our fleet study, which we're going to be studying later tonight at our 7 o'clock study session. So we'll have lots of good questions then. Thanks.
Great. We have approval to put on consent. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I believe you are staying with us for item 6.
For the second one as well, yes. So
Okay.
item 6 is similarly another 2023-2024 BTIP approved project, and this is for our CIP project and portfolio management tool. So the city went through a comprehensive RFP process and selected Masterworks by Origo Software. This project is budgeted for, excuse me, approximately 1.195 million. And we're asking for approval for the contract of $487,366. So this is $180,000 to implement the software and approximately $307,000 for the first 2 years of licensing.
Any questions? Council President Kritzer.
I'm just curious why it came in so much lower than we originally budgeted.
So there is more costs involved in this project than just simply this contract. So we've also brought in a consultant that we used to put together the RFP and work with us to gather requirements to make sure that we were selecting the right software tool. And we anticipate some additional expenses for supplemental staff to help implement, configure on an ongoing basis. But this particular quote, we went into it with very little information. We knew that our colleagues in Public Works needed a platform. There was a fairly wide disparity between low-end packages to implement and the high-end packages. So we, rather than having to default to asking for too little and come back and ask for more, we looked at where we would likely end, picking one of the better solutions. But yeah, this is a process that we are maturing in TIS to make sure that we have more information when we come forward for those BTIP proposals, so we can get the budget request closer to the real dollar amount. But again, this project will end up costing more than the requested $487,000 due to other expenses. So.
Any other questions? Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Director Marchand. And I'm grateful to hear that the team has identified a solution to the myriad of spreadsheets and other things that have been holding our CIP together. So thank you so much. I also had a question just on the financial piece. So included here is the cost of implementation and the first 2 years of licensing. This is a BTIP project for 23-24. When do you anticipate going live with this product?
So we anticipate will be an approximately 9-month execute from the point of contract execution to going live. So that's our current projection.
Okay, so the funds you're asking for, you are asking for the contract. So these will be paid for this year, and then implementation will continue. Then the ongoing subscription costs of this particular piece of software, where will that continue to come out of the CIP then?
So the ongoing, once the system goes live, those ongoing licensing fees would get incorporated into TIS's operating budget on an annual basis. So that would go into our baseline budget after that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? And the ask is for this to go on consent on September 17th. Is everyone good with that? Yes. Well, I'll give the thumb. So that's the final thumb in approval. So thank you so much. We appreciate this, and we will see this on consent on the 17th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have item number 7, acceptance of the Washington Auto Theft Prevention Authority grant. I believe I saw Chief Lowe join us, and there he comes.
Good afternoon. So this item here is for acceptance of additional grant funds. These funds are coming from the Washington State Auto Theft Prevention Authority for $44,100, specifically for automatic license plate reading cameras. So this is coming back from the original conversation that we had earlier in August. This was I don't call it internal snafu that caused it not to be discussed during that initial meeting. Consistent with that, you guys received emails earlier this week in regards to the data use policy, which was the other portion of that conversation that we agreed to separate from the grant acceptance process. So again, this is asking for authority to accept the $44,100.
Any questions? Council President Kritzer.
Thanks for bringing this forward, and always great to get a grant for expenses in the city. One quick question, since I think when we previously saw this with a different grant, I had mostly assumed that the amount of the grant covered the cost of the technology. So I would just love to see overall what we expect the technology cost to be over time, since clearly we now have a grant to cover more of the cost. So just could we get, how much is it? I mean, I don't know if you can tell us offhand how much this technology will cost overall, and if our grants now will cover the whole cost.
The grants will definitely cover the costs. I don't anticipate using the full $44,000 necessarily. So the next steps is once we actually have the project scoped out, we will then come forward with the actual contracts, and at that point we will have the say total known and fixed costs for it moving forward. Both of these grants cover the first 2 years of this particular project. So essentially, it is covered for throughout this current biennium, and then we'll know what future and ongoing costs are, should we continue with that technology.
Great. Well, thank you to you and your staff for going and seeking funding for this technology, and I'm in support of putting this on consent.
Councilmember Salahadin.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that question, are there any other grants we're going to be anticipating for this?
As of right now, no, we do not have any other grant applications out, and we're not seeking anything currently. And then based on previous direction from the council president, we will, I'll say, seek permission first before getting the grants and then coming back, in reverse. To the best that we can, because sometimes the announcements come out and then they're very short application windows, and then our internal timelines don't necessarily always coincide with that. But to the degree that we can, we will come forward with the idea first, make sure it's consistent with, I'll say, council's priorities and direction, and then submit applications.
Thank you.
Council President Kurtzer.
And I'll just clarify on that, since I had a follow-up conversation with the chief after our last discussion on this topic, just about to clarify that it's really for things that are new technologies or new things that we haven't yet as a council given direction on, because we wouldn't want our staff applying for a grant if we weren't on board with actually spending the money of that grant on that particular thing. So whereas if we've already given direction that we're supportive of something, then generally we'd see that come forward once the grant's been applied for. And if anyone else disagrees, feel free to jump in now and share your thoughts on that, but that was my general recommendation.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation, and I'll just restate for the public, this very situation we find ourselves in is exactly and where the chief left off with his remarks is why council is having a conversation about data use regarding this technology, and is supportive of Director Marchand's future work to build a data governance strategy for the entire city. So I think there's current work, current opportunities, and future comprehensive work to be done as well. So we've kind of got our eyes on multiple levels at the same time here. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will give one more plug for if anyone has any questions on that data governance policy that the chief has put forward, to please get your questions to Deidre, hopefully by next week, because we're going to try to get this on an upcoming public safety meeting. All right, any other questions? And do we have approval for placement of this grant acceptance on consent on September 17th? I'm seeing some nodding heads, so you have your consent approval. Thank you, Chief Lowe.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have item number 8, although I think this is going to be a very fun item for us to talk about. We're all very interested in this one, and we're being joined by Director Garcia. This is our fees for extended use of right-of-way for outdoor dining.
Good evening, Council. This is a very good topic for today. I am here with Paul Cho and Patty Criddle of our Traffic Operations and Safety Engineering Division. And just to remind you, from an August 13th study session, we had brought forward the extended right-of-way use fees to you. We were directed to separate the construction fees and outdoor dining fees. The extended right-of-way use fee for construction was approved as part of the consent agenda on September 3rd. So Patty and Paul will be here to give you an update of what they've done with the feedback from direct business owners.
So we will be providing you with feedback we have gathered from restaurant owners who have cafe seating permits currently, right-of-way permits. We have contacted our neighbors in Bellevue, Bothell, and Kirkland regarding number of permits issued, and at this time, we have not received a clear response. So in addition to completing the online questionnaire, we reached out to all 6 permitted restaurant owners, and we offered to meet with them in person and to discuss the right-of-way use fee and to gather their feedback. We met in person or virtually with 3 restaurant owners, and conversations mainly consisted of 2 of the owners expressed that the $2 per square foot of closed right-of-way was fair and reasonable. And they also expressed that they wanted clarification that restaurants would be applying for a single permit and not multiple permits with different fees. They also felt that the permit administration was too difficult at times for restaurateurs and requested that the permit be for a longer duration or make the renewal easier and cheaper. One owner shared, "This is just another fee we have to pay." One permitted restaurant owner emailed us his comments and said that the fee is too much on top of what we are paying as a permit fee. Half the responses felt the fee was fair and responsible, and half were dissatisfied with any other additional fees.
Hi, my name is Paul Cho with Public Works, and I'll present you with the proposal that we had after the discussions we had with the restaurant owners. Again, as a background, attachment A in your packet has information on how we came to the $2 fees. If you want additional information, we can provide that. But with the feedback, what we heard was make it easier for the permits. They know how to run a restaurant. Applying for permits and all the little line item applications is challenging for either the owner or their staff. And then we heard feedback from council that, please look at ways that we can lower the overall cost to the businesses. So what Public Works is proposing is a permit that is good for 2 years. So on the second year, there is no need for a renewal. You do not have to go through the permitting process again. It's good for 2 years. And then on the third year, then we will go through the permit process again, because at the third year, things may have changed, and we do need to take a closer look at, what are the conditions, what's happening out in the field. So this will effectively take the administrative permit cost in half. The $2 per square foot use fee, that will remain the same. We believe that that is a fair cost. But again, we believe that we're providing the benefit that from what we got from the feedback from the restaurant owners to make the permit easier, make it cheaper, and then make it last longer. We also, just to clarify, it is one permit, and they will pay one calculated fee. So it's not like, okay, you pay this, and then you pay this, and you pay this. It's just going to be one fee.
Ready to take questions? Okay. Any questions from council? Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you for this information. As you were explaining it, one thing that I thought about is just from my personal experience working with folks on renewing things on time, it sounds like restaurant owners will be able to apply and that process takes some time. How challenging is it for the owner to be invoiced annually, or can we give them an option to do that? And the reason is because cities will maybe budget biannually, but we are, as a business owner, you're most likely doing an annual budget. So it may be easier for them to plan for that cost as opposed to miss it every other year. So I'm really curious about if we've considered that. It sounded like a lot of this was for us and sort of the benefit of reducing our administrative costs, but in terms of for the business owners, of which there's 6, I believe, the ease of renewing it as an option to pay annually, and maybe like a slight discount for a 2-year renewal might make some sense for them.
We can definitely have 2 options where you can apply for a 2-year permit and then pay your 2-year fee up front, or if you would just like to go year to year, maybe some businesses decide that they don't, they can't see 2 years into the future and want to go that route. So we can definitely look at both routes.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you. Council President Kritzer.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you doing the outreach and getting that feedback and thinking creatively. And I do think, based on also my conversations with some of those business owners as well, that I think having less paperwork to do and kind of as few touches as possible is good. So I would support the 2-year option. And one question with the 2-year option. So in terms of the chart that you provided in this memo, the estimated total, for example, the proposed City of Redmond rates. So I see there's $672 for the permit fee. Does that cover the 2 years?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so it wouldn't be you have to pay it twice. It's not $1,200.
No. It effectively cuts the cost in half. So they pay $672 instead of every year. They'll pay that once for every 2 years.
Okay, so, and was that the amount that we originally had proposed to us, but now it's basically $300 a year instead of $600 a year?
Yeah, so since the permit is going to be good for 2 years, we won't have that administrative action of reviewing either a renewal or a new permit and then going out and doing the inspection. So yes, it will benefit the city staff to reduce their administrative time, and then conversely, the businesses won't have to go through the same thing.
Great, thank you. And then one question just on that chart where we can see the other similar cities, and we see Seattle has it at 0, and then other cities have it lower. Can you speak to that? Because I know one of the questions we had posed was, could we just lower the annual fee per square foot?
So I don't believe we were able to get drilled down with Seattle, kind of, hey, where did your fees come from? What components does your permit fee consist of? We went and looked through their website and got their information. So even though on the table it shows that there's a 0 permit fee, it's kind of how they packaged their overall program. So, we were able to break out where the different components of the fee go to. So the administrative, the extended use, and then the excise tax. Seattle grouped their information a little differently. And then as far as Bothell, you can see in Bothell, there's actually 2 line items, and it kind of speaks to if you're an early applicant versus a late applicant. So there's kind of an early bird special, I guess.
Yeah, but their annual fee per square foot does seem to be lower than ours, which, based on the analysis, which I appreciated the other attached memo, it seems like we could choose within a range, and we actually chose below the analyzed range. So I guess my question is still, could we choose like to match Bothel's rate of 168, or, something similar? Or is there a kind of minimum that we do need to meet based on our modeling?
Well, it wasn't the modeling. So what's included in the price is the administrative fees of staff time. So the idea for the original cost was the full cost recovery for the permit and all the staff going out and inspecting the site. So we had thought that extending the duration of 2 years was still adhering to the cost recovery model, but also addressing the needs of simpler, easier for as much people as possible, other than the cost. But you do have the choice to lower it.
Yeah, and I'll expand a little bit. So yeah, we did a lot of analysis, and it is based on the land value, the adjacent land value of Redmond, and then versus Bothell. Also, this is an annual cost versus, as you recall, for the construction, it was a monthly cost. If council feels that we need to go back and change those costs, that's something that council can do, but this is our proposal to council that after research, we believe that this is a fair amount. And then after reaching out to the businesses, again, of those that responded, half of them said that they believe that that's a fair cost.
Thanks.
Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Not on the cost, but rather on what we're hearing is fee fatigue. What we're hearing is, hey, we're business people, we're not permit people. And the fee, if it's wrapped inside of another holistic universal permit, then it wouldn't have the same fee fatigue as what the businesses are experiencing right now. Has this, and I appreciate that we've extended it to the 2 years so that it's decreasing the amount of work that they need to do. But has this sparked a larger conversation around a universal permit?
A universal permit this is based on our right-of-way use permit?
Correct. So if a business is a brick and mortar and that this could be worked into the business permit.
That's two different things in my understanding. So this is a business permit, wouldn't be with Public Works, and so that was a little outside our scope of proposing this fee.
Yeah, and I was just looking at, is there some way that we can streamline to where it's not yet another thing and yet another thing, for the small businesses?
Well, so just another thing to think about, remember that there are only certain situations where outdoor dining would be possible. So that's part of the inspection and analysis for each permit. So not all businesses would have that. So that's why it's in the right-of-way group, and they have to analyze the width of the available space on the sidewalk. And when we started talking about it, it's really the downtown areas and where we've actually identified to build wider sidewalks, but that was all for accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the conversation that you have to choose from, that for the businesses that happen to be restaurants, that happen to have either parking or a wide sidewalk, this is for them.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director, for the clarification.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, and thank you for going back out to speak with the 6 business owners. I think that this process has demonstrated that when we speak to those most impacted by policy change, whether it's these 6 business owners downtown or 23 residents at a bus stop in the Overlake Metro Center, like another department did, we make a better decision in the end. So I look forward to the day when those Redmond businesses are giving us feedback like, you know what, it's great doing business in Redmond because they always ask us and we always come to a solution together. So I appreciate that their voices were heard this time, and I am fine with having this on consent. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I will jump in with my 2 thoughts on this one. I am in support of Councilmember Anderson's proposal of potentially allowing businesses to pay 1 year and then get billed for the second year. I really appreciate the ability for this to extend over 2 years. I think that was a great compromise on all of this. I think most of the businesses will be appreciative of that and not having to go through that permit process again. And then I think my other question was answered. So the current modeling is based on just straight cost recovery because we found this as an issue during one of our recent audits, correct? Okay.
And I just go back to the land use. I mean, the land use value was part of where we came up with the $2.
Great. Great. Thank you. Council President Kritzer.
I just say, since it sounds like we're nearing some a discussion about putting this on the agenda, that I personally, before I'd vote on this, would still like the answer to the question of what's the lowest rate we could charge that is not a gift of public funds. So if you could provide me with that answer, I think it would be helpful to know.
Councilmember Kritzer, would you clarify that, because I think we analyzed the full cost recovery was for administrative staff and the inspection, so that was the permit cost. So what else are you looking for a lower, if you want to lower it?
I think it's the annual fee per square foot cost, which you did analyze based on cost recovery. And my understanding is that there's a certain amount that we do need to recover so that we're not giving a gift of public funds. And so if the answer is that we need to do full cost recovery for it to not be a gift of public funds, then that's great. And if not, then I'm curious to know what that number is, because I personally could see charging a slightly lower rate, maybe akin to what Bothell or Kirkland charge, as a potential incentive to just have more businesses create this type of outdoor dining, since clearly from our public, we saw from the public feedback, people really wanted to see more of it.
So I'm going to go on a limb here, and you're asking about, can the $2 be lower than $2 per square
Yes.
foot? Okay.
If I'm not being
All
clear,
right.
yes.
So we had several meetings with the city attorney to talk about, hey, what can we set the fees at? And so the city attorney advised us to you need to anchor it to some metric. And so if you select an arbitrary value, then that can be questioned. And so be careful and make sure that you anchor it to some known metric. And so obviously the adjacent land value is a metric that you can look up in King County records. But as far as what percentage of that, that if you would like to direct us to a specific percentage, we could look at that. I don't, when you say what's the lowest, I think we start to get into a little gray area.
That makes sense to me. I guess the piece that I had a little bit of confusion around when I was looking through the memo is that the actual recommendation that came in didn't land exactly at $2, or at least in what I saw in the analysis. So it seemed like staff were recommending a number based on some additional analysis. And so if that's true, then I guess the question is, how do we pick that number? And I think that's the question that still is out there for me.
We could further give detail if we need. The memo actually went through a lot. If I remember correctly, the going straight by land use, it was a higher number for $2. And so that's when we analyzed what our neighbors were doing. And it seemed like a reasonable cost recovery with the amount of staff yet again. So council can fully decide to go half of what we're proposing or a quarter, but it would be a little bit more difficult for us to go back and further detail for you how to make that decision when you could just make the decision now.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fields.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you got the fee right. I appreciate and understand that we need to charge, and this is public right away, and I do think that restaurants and business owners should provide some contribution back for that. One of the questions I had asked some time ago, and I don't expect an answer tonight, but I would like your commitment that you will continue to evaluate this, and that is as the city grows and grows in traffic, especially because I see a lot of new housing coming online still in the process of being built, that we will in fact evaluate every year on the impact of having these permitted right-of-ways for restaurant use as traffic continues to grow in downtown Redmond. So I don't know what your plans are to look at it in a year or 2 years, but I would hope that you would get back to council and say, yes, there is a problem emerging. There's a lot more cars, a lot more traffic, and safety is becoming a concern.
Thank you, Councilmember Fields. I think if you take a chance to look at the questionnaire responses, some of the questions that the public could fill out is if you've felt if the traffic affected you, or if a sidewalk, an outdoor dining situation had affected your way. So when we were working with communications, we were pretty happy with the questions, so we can definitely do that same survey again to see if we got any differences of the responses. But that should be summarized.
Yeah, no, right. No, and I appreciate the question. I appreciate the input from the public. What I'm saying, and I think you acknowledged, is that we're in a very changing environment, changing dynamic, and that answer may be different in 2 years. So.
Thank you. All right, we are at our time for our meeting, but there's a lingering question of placing this on consent, or if council wants to look at the annual fee per square foot at $2 question. So I will pose that question to everyone here. Anybody good for putting this on consent? I see 1, 2, 3. Councilmember Fields raised your hand. I'm guessing that was a thumb. And then for discussing the fee, is anyone else interested? Council President Kritzer, go ahead.
Yeah, if the rest of the council wants to put this on consent, I'm okay with it going to consent, but I may pull it and bring a proposal.
Absolutely. Great. We will place this on consent, and council members may pull if they would like to continue to discuss or amend. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the hard work on this. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. Thanks, everyone. We are adjourned.